The air inside the Newman ranch felt heavier than usual, like even the walls were tired of Victor Newman's decisions. Nikki stood near the grand staircase, her posture rigid, her eyes burning with a mixture of disbelief and anger that had been building for hours. Victor didn't look at her at first. He poured himself a drink with slow, deliberate movements, as if the clink of glass against crystal could drown out the argument waiting to explode. You used Jack, Nikki said finally, her voice low but sharp enough to cut through steel. You used someone I care about like he was just another pawn in your endless revenge games. Victor turned, his expression hard, unyielding. Jack Abbott is not some innocent victim, Nikki. He's a rival, he always has been. That doesn't justify what you did, Nikki snapped, stepping closer. You drugged him, you set him up with another woman, you destroyed his marriage. Victor's jaw tightened. I did what was necessary. For what? Your pride? Nikki's voice rose now, echoing through the massive room. You didn't just hurt Jack, you hurt Diane, you hurt me. Victor finally met her eyes, his gaze cold. You're overreacting. That was the breaking point. Nikki let out a bitter laugh, shaking her head. Overreacting? You crossed a line, Victor, even for you. He set his glass down with a sharp thud. If you can't accept how I handle things, maybe you shouldn't be here. A silence. Then quietly but firmly, Victor said, get out. The words hung in the air like a gunshot. Nikki stared at him, stunned. For a moment, it looked like she might say something else, might fight harder, but instead her expression shifted. The anger didn't disappear, but it hardened into something colder, something final. You don't get to push me out and pretend this is fine, she said. Not this time. Victor didn't respond. And that silence said everything. Across town, the Abbott mansion was unraveling just as quickly. Jack stood in the middle of the living room, his hands trembling slightly as he watched Diane move across the space with cold efficiency. A suitcase lay open on the couch, and she was packing with a precision that felt more like a surgical removal than a simple departure. Diane, please, Jack said, his voice raw, just listen to me. I've done enough listening, she replied without looking at him. You don't understand what happened. Oh, I understand perfectly, Diane snapped, finally turning to face him. Her eyes were glassy, but no tears fell. I walked in and saw my husband in bed with another woman. What part of that requires more explanation? I was drugged, Jack insisted, stepping closer. I didn't know what I was doing. Victor set this up. It was a trap. Diane let out a short, humorless laugh. Convenient. It's the truth, Jack's voice cracked. I would never do that to you, you know me. Do I? She shot back. That question hit harder than anything else. Jack faltered, his confidence slipping. After everything we've been through, you have to believe me. Diane shook her head slowly. Belief isn't the problem, Jack, trust is. She zipped up the suitcase with a final, decisive motion. And right now, I don't have any left. Jack moved quickly, blocking her path. Don't do this, don't walk away because of something I didn't even choose. You still ended up there, Diane said quietly, and that's something I can't unsee. Her voice softened for a brief moment, and that almost made it worse. I fought so hard to believe in us again, she continued, to believe that we could actually have something real. We do, Jack said desperately, we still do. Diane looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she stepped around him. Not anymore. Jack stood frozen as she walked toward the door, suitcase in hand. Every instinct told him to stop her, to say something that would fix this, but nothing came. Because deep down he knew. This wasn't something words could repair. The door closed behind her with a quiet click that felt louder than any slam. And just like that, everything changed. At Crimson Lights, the tension was just as suffocating, though it came wrapped in the hum of espresso machines and low conversations. Nate Hastings didn't bother with subtlety. You've got some nerve showing your face here, he said, his tone sharp as he stared at Kane Ashby across the table. Kane leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, already irritated. I'm not in the mood for another lecture, Nate. Good, Nate replied, because this isn't a lecture, it's reality. Your version of it, Kane shot back. Nate leaned forward, his eyes blazing. Lily is out there, your kids are out there, and somehow everything keeps spiraling because of the chaos surrounding you. Kane's expression darkened. You think I don't know that? You think I'm not doing everything I can to fix it? Then do better, Nate snapped. That did it. Kane slammed his hand on the table, drawing a few glances from nearby customers. I am doing better. You don't get to stand there and act like you care more than I do. Nate didn't flinch. I care enough to call you out. Kane stood up now, the tension between them crackling. You don't know the full story. Then enlighten me. For a moment, Kane hesitated, then a dangerous edge crept into his voice. Maybe you should be looking a little closer to home, he said, like Victoria Newman. Nate's expression shifted instantly. What about Victoria? Kane tilted his head slightly. What if she's not as innocent as you think? What if she had a hand in Victor's kidnapping scheme? The words landed like a bomb. Nate stared at him, disbelief flashing across his face. That's a serious accusation. Is it? Kane replied coolly. Or is it something you just don't want to believe? Nate clenched his jaw, anger rising again. If you're wrong about this. I'm not, Kane interrupted. The silence between them stretched, heavy and uncertain. For the first time, Nate didn't have an immediate comeback. Because if there was even a chance Kane was telling the truth, then things were far worse than anyone realized. Back at the Abbott mansion, Jack stood alone in the empty room, the weight of everything pressing down on him. Victor's scheme. Diane leaving. His entire life unraveling in a matter of hours. He ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing, trying to piece together what had happened, trying to prove something he barely understood himself. Drugged. Set up. Manipulated. The truth was there somewhere, he could feel it. But the damage. That was already done. And for the first time in a long time, Jack Abbott had no idea how to fix it. The night stretched long over Genoa City, but sleep didn't come easily to anyone tangled in Victor Newman's latest disaster. At the Newman Ranch, silence had replaced the earlier storm, but it wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that comes after something breaks beyond repair. Victor stood alone in his study, staring out the window, his reflection faint in the glass. For a man who controlled empires, the emptiness behind him felt like a quiet accusation. Nikki was gone. Not just out of the room, out of the house. Out of his reach. For a fleeting second, something almost human crossed Victor's face. Regret. But it vanished just as quickly, buried under decades of pride and control. She'll come back, he muttered to himself. But the room didn't agree. Nikki, meanwhile, sat in her car outside the ranch gates, her hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Her eyes were wet, but she refused to cry. Not over Victor. Not again. She replayed everything in her mind. The lies, the manipulation, the way he had dismissed her feelings like they were nothing. And Jack. Poor Jack. Another woman, she whispered bitterly. You really went that far, Victor. Her thoughts sharpened, questions began forming, ugly and persistent. Who was the woman? How deep did this go? And then it clicked. Patty Williams. The name hit her like a cold shock. If Victor had really brought Patty into this. Nikki's grip tightened. No, she said under her breath, this isn't just revenge, this is cruelty. And for the first time, Nikki Newman started to wonder if her marriage wasn't just damaged, but fundamentally broken. Across town, Diane Jenkins Abbott stepped into a quiet hotel suite, the soft lighting doing nothing to ease the storm inside her. She set her suitcase down slowly, as if rushing would somehow make this more real. Then she stopped, moving altogether. The silence pressed in. No Jack. No shared space. No illusion of safety. Diane walked toward the window, wrapping her arms around herself. The city lights blurred slightly as her eyes filled, but still, no tears fell. I won't be that woman again, she said quietly, not the one who forgives everything. Because that's what this was about. Not just betrayal. A pattern. A history. Fear. Jack's voice echoed in her mind. I was drugged. Maybe it was true. Maybe Victor had orchestrated everything. But the image wouldn't leave her. Jack in bed with Patty. That moment was burned into her memory, too vivid, too real. And no explanation could erase it. Diane closed her eyes, steadying herself. This time, she whispered, I choose me. Back at the Abbott mansion, Jack wasn't choosing anything. He was unraveling. He sat at the bar, untouched drink in front of him, his mind looping through the same questions again and again. What happened? What did Victor do? And how do I prove it? Fragments came back in flashes. A drink. A strange taste. The room spinning. Patty's face too close, too wrong. Jack shot upright, his breath catching. Oh, that's it. It wasn't clear, but it was enough. He hadn't imagined it. He had been drugged. Which meant Victor hadn't just manipulated the situation. He had engineered it. Jack grabbed his phone, his hands shaking slightly as he dialed. This isn't over, he said under his breath. Not for Victor. And not for Diane's. At Crimson Lights, the earlier confrontation between Nate and Kane had left a residue of tension that hadn't faded. Nate stood alone now, staring at his phone, Kane's words replaying in his mind. What if Victoria had a hand in it? No, Nate muttered, that doesn't make sense. But doubt is a stubborn thing. Victoria Newman. Powerful, loyal to Victor. Capable of more than she let on. Nate exhaled slowly, running a hand over his face. If there's even a chance. He didn't finish the thought. Because finishing it meant accepting something he wasn't ready to face. Kane, on the other hand, had no such hesitation. He stood outside, the cool air doing little to calm him down. They think I'm the problem, he muttered. They have no idea. His mind was focused, sharp. Lily, Charlie, Maddie, his family, and anyone connected to their disappearance was going to answer for it. Victor Newman. Victoria Newman. It didn't matter who stood in his way. Kane's jaw tightened. I'll burn it all down if I have to. Back at the ranch, Victor's phone rang. He glanced at the screen. Jack Abbott. Victor smirked faintly before answering. Jack, he said smoothly, to what do I owe this call? Jack's voice came through, controlled but simmering with anger. You know exactly why I'm calling. Victor leaned back in his chair. Enlighten me. You drugged me, Jack said. You set me up with Patty. You tried to destroy my marriage. A pause. Then Victor chuckled softly. Careful, Jack. Those are serious accusations. They're true. Victor's tone hardened slightly. Even if they were, you still made your choices. I didn't have a choice, Jack snapped, and you're going to admit what you did. Victor's smile disappeared. I don't admit to anything, he said coldly. Then I'll prove it. Another pause. This one heavier. Dangerous. Victor's voice dropped. You think you can take me down over this? I think I already have, Jack replied. You just don't know it yet. And then he hung up. Victor stared at the phone, his expression unreadable. But something had shifted. Jack wasn't just reacting anymore. He was fighting back. Across the city, Nikki finally drove away from the ranch, the gates closing behind her like the end of something long overdue. Diane stood alone in her hotel room, choosing strength over heartbreak. Nate wrestled with doubt. Kane prepared for war. And Jack Abbott was done being a victim. In Genoa City, nothing stays buried forever. And this time, the truth was coming for everyone.